Have you always wondered how some people crochet so quickly? It's weird, like they seem to be doing the same thing that you're doing and yet they're growing so much faster. Well, actually it's not as complicated as it might appear, and in fact, anyone of any crochet level can crochet faster if they just make a few tweaks to what they're doing, the tools that they're using, and the attitude that they're having to what they're making. How you hold your hook is such a controversial thing, and it totally shouldn't be. Basically, everywhere that you look online, they'll say that you should either do a pencil grip or a knife grip. And if we break that down right to its basic level, a pencil grip is when the hook is outside your hand, and a knife grip is when it's inside your hand. I don't hold my pencil like most other people. I've been criticised for it throughout my school career, and even now when I'm filling in forms, like in a bank or somewhere that you'd think people would have a modicum of tact, I still have people leaning over and going, "That's a very strange way to hold a pen." It is, but you know what? It works for me. I use more fingers than the average person does when I'm holding my pencil, and I also do when I'm holding my crochet hook. So on a surface level, I hold my hook in a pencil grip because I hold it over the top of my hand, but I also use way more of my fingers to manipulate the hook as well. I think that that gives me extra control and extra dexterity. However, everybody's different. What I recommend if you're on a mission to try and crochet as quickly as you possibly can is try holding the hook in some different ways. If you're a pencil grip person, try a knife grip. If you're a knife grip person, try a pencil grip. Put your hook into different positions that you have not tried before. Experiment, move those fingers around. You might find that one of them is faster than the others. And no, categorically, I do not think that there is a fastest way for everyone to hold their hook. We're all different. We all have differently proportioned hands. We all have different amounts of strength in our fingers and different levels of natural dexterity. Some things will be easier for some people than others, and so the very first thing to do, experiment with how you're holding your hook. The hook that you're choosing is going to massively impact your speed, and it's kind of to do, I want to say aerodynamics, that is not the right word. It's sort of to do with friction, but also to do with how easy to manipulate the hook is. I'm holding this hook because it is my favorite hook, and there are a few things that make it my favorite hook, and one of them is the smoothness of the throat. Now, this is something that I talk about quite a lot, but my goodness, does it make a big difference to how quickly you use the hook. Your throat, which is that little gap where the yarn goes, should be completely smooth. It should be the smoothest of the smooth things. You can't probably get your finger in that gap, but you can get a piece of yarn in there, and what you do is just run the yarn backwards and forwards to feel if it's smooth. There should be no drag whatsoever. Some hooks feel like they've only got a tiny bit of drag, some hooks feel like it's butter sliding through it, and that's what you want for the quickest experience. The fastest hook is one with a smooth throat, but that is not where it ends with your hook. Think about the motions that you're using when you're crocheting. So people have different techniques for going through the stitches. I use this little pointed end here quite a lot to pick up stitches. I therefore find that a hook that has a little bit of a point here rather than a blunt stub is quicker because it is easier to pick up those stitches. But again, it must not be burred because you're going to get drag again as you move. The other structural part of the hook that's going to really speed you up is the top of the head just here. And if you are more of a push through your stitch than pick up with the little hooky bit, then you want the most pointed and smooth, again incredibly smooth end to your hook. So all of this is just enabling you to have the easiest motion as you're working with the yarn. So friction, a huge thing. You do not want friction on this metal or plastic, if you're using a plastic one, end of your hook. That should be entirely smooth for you to work as quickly as you possibly can. Hook grip comes into this hugely as well. So I would always say to use an ergonomic hook if you want to go faster. For me personally, I absolutely work quicker with an ergonomic grip. That's one that's got a bit of padding around here. However, again, if you're not sure, try with both. See which one works quicker for you. Experiment. Makes a huge difference. Again, we're all different. All our hands are different. How we hold the hook is different. Therefore, how we hold the grip is different. So just have a try with different ones. For me personally, one of the other reasons that this is my favorite hook, I wish I knew what brand this hook was. I think it was like a multi-pack hook, but just a really success story from it. But this is a rubber grip, and I love a rubber grip because you want no friction here, right? but you want a bit of friction there. Not too much. You don't want it to be rough and distracting so that you're shifting around and finding a new position in your hand because you don't want to keep holding it, but it needs to grip itself to your hand as you work. I have an absolutely beautiful crochet hook that's got the interchangeable tops. I bought it because I loved how the handle felt and it was incredibly smooth. When I come to work with it, it's sliding out my hand the whole time. I don't know what I was thinking. It's like a fidget toy. 10 out of 10 for a fidget toy, but I never use it to crochet with because it just disappears and moves around, because you want it to be lodged in your hand, not to the extent that it's uncomfortable, but so that it doesn't move around, so it doesn't interrupt with your flow as you work. I also find that hook size makes a really big difference for me too. The fastest that I work is probably with a 3.5 to 4.5 millimeter hook. Anything smaller than 3.5, I am having to concentrate on finding each individual stitch a lot, and anything bigger than 4.5, and I know that's probably on the smaller end for some people, but for me personally, again, I start to feel that it's a little more unwieldy for me. Once you get up to the sort of 7 level, then I'm a proper tortoise, not a hare, you know, it's not going to go as fast. So you will find that the size of hook that you're working with makes a difference to how fast you can go. Likewise, and obviously in a related topic, the yarn weight is going to make a huge difference to that as well. I probably work fastest in a worsted weight yarn. I'm still pretty fast in a DK or an Aran yarn, but I'd say worsted is probably the best place for me in terms of speed. Once you're into chunky, again, I'm slowed down, and super chunky yarn, I have only made one big project with that. It took such a long time, and it wasn't just the way that you're moving your hook and the way that you're holding it being different, it was also the effort to manipulate it, which muscularly, it's a word, is more challenging. Therefore, it added more strain. It's the only time I've got really bad wrist pain from crocheting, was that really thick, heavy stuff. It's just not as fast. So for me, max speed is probably with a worsted weight yarn, but I'd be really interested to know what you think on that front, because again, individual variation. This is one of these things where we're just going to have to try a few things if we're having fun to see how fast we can go. Some yarn fibers are so much quicker to work with than others. For me, a cotton silk blend is my speed dream. That is when I am working the most quickly, and it tends to be because it slides through, it doesn't have too much friction, but it's got a tiny bit. So let's break that down. Why do we want a bit of friction with it? Well, it's because of the tensioning hand. So when I'm working with a yarn that is incredibly smooth and silky, I find that it tries to run through at a quicker rate than I want it to, which impacts my tension, which means that I have to tighten up in order to keep hold of it better, which means that I'm slowed down because my tension is requiring more of my focus. Cotton blend yarns I tend to work quickest with. Also some acrylics I find work up really quickly, but there is a massive variation in quality when it comes to that, which I've talked about here. So again, there's an amount of experimentation that's required for that one. So in general, as a rule of thumb, I would say I am fastest with a worsted weight cotton blend yarn with a 4mm crochet hook like this guy. The technique that you use for your tension is also going to make a big difference to how quickly you can work. There's a sweet spot between tight tension and loose tension that is the fastest to work, and I could only describe it really here as a medium tension. Again, experiment a bit. I think that you will find, like me, that when you feel very rigid and tight with your stitches, that it is not as easy to move your hook. But likewise, if you're trying to go for a very relaxed feel, you can't do that as quickly because the yarn is not in such a static place. So as you move it around, it's a bit slower to manipulate. Certain patterns inevitably are going to make for faster crochet. I am probably my most speedy when I am either working in rounds, in even rounds from magic circles, or when I'm making granny squares, because I don't need to involve the obvious parts of my brain in order to do them. The more repetitive a project is, the quicker you're going to be able to work it up as a general rule. And of course, the less complicated it is going to work, and that is to do with stitch knowledge, I would say. So to me, I am never going to be able to work as fast on a pattern where there is a stitch involved that I'm not confident, that I don't know inside out, that I can't just produce, that I'd have to think or read instructions to do, that's always, of course, going to be slower. It has to be mentioned that one of the things that makes you fast at crocheting is practice. The more you do it, the quicker you're going to get. And it is so annoying to hear, because that is just like giving time as the answer. Just give it time. You know, in time you'll get there. But you actually will. The more you practice, the more you repeat. It's what people refer to as muscle memory, but it's actually your brain memory. Do it more, it will get fast, because you won't have to have that extra thinking time as you're doing it. It will become so natural to you that you'll just do it and it'll just flow through. I have been doing this for a long time, and I would say that my ability to crochet quickly probably peaked and stayed there after 1 or 2 years. I don't think that I just get faster and faster and faster over the years. I think that with practice up to a point, you're always going to get faster until you're at the point where, yep, you're going as fast as you're going to go, and that's fine. Finally, and possibly even more frustratingly, I think confidence plays a part in this too. I am an awful overthinker of things. I mean, I can overthink the weather, right? I overthink so many things in my life, but I don't tend to overthink crochet. I just do it. It flows. I've come up with a pattern in my head and I want to make it and write it down. And I don't often follow other people's patterns anymore, incredibly rarely. I make my own designs, and therefore the thinking that I'm doing is sort of structural and pictorial rather than thinking about what I'm following. And I am confident when I crochet, and that adds a huge amount of speed to what I'm doing, because I'm not second guessing myself as I'm going along. And I know that it's ridiculous for me to sit here and tell you be confident, because that's like a huge thing, right? But I do think that it ties into practice, and that the more you practice, the more confident you'll be, and the more trust that you'll have in your own brain and body to know the process and just get on with it, and you will find that you speed up. But tell me, what do you think? Is that true? Do you agree with me? Is that how you would advise someone to be faster at crochet? Do you think that's going to help you to crochet faster? When do you think you reached your maximum speed of crocheting during your fabulous crocheting career? I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below, and I will see you there. And happy crocheting!